The magnetic storm raged outside Viridian Orbital, bathing the abandoned research station in an eerie blue glow. Dr. Eris Thorne watched through the viewport as meteor fragments and ion-charged particles danced across the black canvas of space. In moments like these, the isolation of Xylo's asteroid belt seemed almost beautiful rather than oppressive. 30 days left on his short-term contract. 30 days of analyzing ancient cross-species communication patterns before he could leave this cold, metal shell with its recycled air and constant mechanical hum. The research was fascinating, but the solitude was beginning to wear on him. Most of the crew had been transferred months ago, leaving Viridian Orbital operating on a skeleton staff, mainly maintenance drones and a handful of scientists like himself who preferred minimal human interaction. A sudden alarm pierced the silence, startling Eris from his thoughts. The station's automated system announced in its eerily calm voice, "Warning. Unscheduled docking in progress. Bay 3. Warning. Unscheduled docking in progress." Eris frowned. No ships were expected for at least 2 weeks. In the midst of a magnetic storm like this, any approach was dangerous, if not suicidal. He hesitated for a moment, then grabbed his station tablet and hurried toward Bay 3. As the linguistics specialist on board, he wasn't security personnel, but with so few humans present, investigating fell to whoever was closest. The corridors echoed with his footsteps as he ran. When he reached the observation deck above Bay 3, what he saw left him breathless. A sleek, metallic vessel of unmistakable Zidonian design had forced an emergency landing. Its hull was scorched, with obvious damage to the port thrusters and navigation array. Battle damage or storm damage, he couldn't tell. Computer station status? Eris called out. Security protocols engaged. Docking bay sealed. Atmospheric equalization in progress. The system responded. Eris' heart raced. Zidonians. The warrior species from the Centauri colonies was known for their military prowess and rigid social hierarchy. Their vessels rarely ventured this far into neutral space unless on official business, or something less official and more concerning. Before he could contact what remained of station security, the ship's airlock cycled open. A single figure emerged, tall and imposing in distinctive silver-blue armor that covered their entire body. The armor's intricate patterns marked the wearer as high-ranking, a commander at least. The Zidonian moved with purpose, but seemed unsteady. One hand braced against the ship's hull. Something was wrong. Abandoning caution, Eris rushed down to the bay floor, reaching the lower level just as the Zidonians stumbled forward and caught themselves against a cargo container. "Are you all right?" Eris called, approaching cautiously. The Zidonian's helmet turned sharply toward him. The reflective visor revealed only Eris' own concerned expression. Human. The voice that emerged was distinctly female, filtered through translation tech, and strained. "This station. What is its designation?" "Viridian Orbital. Research outpost." Eris stopped a safe distance away. "You're injured?" A labored breath came through the helmet's filter. "My ship, damaged in the magnetic storm. Life support compromised." She straightened, military bearing reasserting itself despite obvious distress. "I am Commander Lyra Valerius of the Zidonian Elite Guard. I require emergency docking privileges until repairs can be made." "Of course, you're welcome to," Eris began, but his words cut short as the Zidonian suddenly grasped at her chest plate, a strangled sound escaping her helmet. She staggered, and Eris rushed forward instinctively to help. The commander flinched back at first, but then allowed him to steady her. "What's happening? Are you wounded?" he asked. "Not wounded. My armor." Commander Valerius' voice grew more strained. "Integrated life support damaged in landing. Pressure regulation failing. System crushing my chest." Eris' eyes widened in alarm. Zidonian battle armor was nearly legendary, a sophisticated system that enhanced strength, regulated body temperature, and interfaced directly with the wearer's neural pathways. It was also notoriously complex, with security measures designed to prevent tampering by enemy forces. "Medical bay," he started. "No time," she gasped. Need manual override. Can't. Breathe properly. The commander's gloved hand shot out, grasping Eris' wrist with surprising strength. You, human, I need you to help me remove my armor plates. The system is malfunctioning. Eris froze. Zidonian armor wasn't just equipment. It was a symbol of rank, of identity. For a Zidonian warrior to request a non-Zidonian to touch their armor was unprecedented. Are you certain? I don't know the first thing about. Would I ask if there were alternatives? Her voice had an edge of desperation. Now, the magnetic storm damaged the neural interface. I can't disengage it myself. The pressure is increasing. Making his decision, Eris nodded firmly. Tell me what to do. With trembling hands, Commander Valerius guided his fingers to specific connection points at her shoulders. Release clasps here and here. Then the chest plate should. Separate. Eris worked carefully, following her instructions. His fingers found recessed buttons and hidden latches. Some required specific pressure sequences, others needed to be turned in particular patterns. The armor's fighting me, he muttered, struggling with a particularly stubborn connector. Security protocols, she managed between labored breaths. It's designed to resist. Unauthorized removal. Apply more pressure to the ventral seam. Sweat beaded on Eris' forehead as he worked. Finally, with a pneumatic hiss, the chest plate seal broke. Air rushed in, and Commander Valerius drew a deep, desperate breath. Now, lateral releases, she instructed, her voice stronger. Quickly, Eris found the secondary clasps and disengaged them. The chest plate came free in his hands, heavier than he'd expected and thrumming with dormant energy. Beneath it, Commander Valerius wore a fitted black undersuit embedded with circuitry and monitoring systems. Her breathing stabilized, becoming deeper and more regular. For a moment, they both remained still, the human holding a piece of sacred Zidonian technology, the warrior in a state of unprecedented vulnerability before a stranger. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice losing some of its mechanical edge now that the helmet seal was compromised. She reached up and, after a moment's hesitation, removed her helmet entirely. Eris found himself looking into the face of a Zidonian for the first time. Her skin was pale blue-gray, with subtle patterns along her temples and jawline. Her eyes were striking, silver-irised with vertical pupils that adjusted to the bay's lighting. Her hair, cropped short in military fashion, was white as starlight against her blue skin. But what caught him most by surprise was her expression. Not anger or humiliation at her vulnerability, but something more complex, a measuring gaze, reassessing him in light of what had just transpired. "Your assistance was adequate," she said, taking the chest plate from his hands with a fluid motion that betrayed no weakness. "I am in your debt, linguist." Eris blinked. "How did you know I'm a linguist?" The faintest trace of what might have been amusement crossed her features. "Your station identification," she said, nodding toward the badge on his jacket. "Unless humans have changed their information display protocols since our last cultural exchange." "Right." Eris felt foolish. "Dr. Eris Thorne, xenolinguistics specialist." "And you're welcome, Commander. Let me show you to our medical bay. We should check for any pressure injuries." "That won't be necessary." Commander Valerius straightened, some of her imposing presence returning even with her armor partially disassembled. "My suit's diagnostics indicate no permanent damage. What I require is access to your communications array and maintenance facilities." Eris hesitated, protocol warring with common sense. "I should really alert station security. Your station has precisely 3 human personnel remaining, according to my scan," she interrupted, "none of which are security officers. The nearest Zidonian vessel that could render assistance is 2 sectors away. I am not requesting permission, Dr. Thorne. I am informing you of my requirements." Her tone left no room for argument, yet there was something in her eyes, a recognition, perhaps, of the unusual position they both found themselves in. The proud warrior who had needed help to breathe, and the solitary researcher who had provided it. "At least let me notify the station administrator," Eris said, finding a compromise. "And then I could show you to the communications hub." After a moment's consideration, Commander Valerius nodded once. Acceptable. As they walked through the station's corridors, Eris couldn't help glancing at the Zidonian warrior beside him. Her movements were precise, economical, despite her recent distress. She carried her helmet under one arm, the chest plate under the other, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings with military awareness. "My mission is classified," she said suddenly, as if reading his thoughts. "But I am not here to bring harm to your station or its personnel." "I didn't think you were," Eris replied, surprising himself with his own honesty. Commander Valerius gave him a sidelong look that he couldn't quite interpret. "Perhaps you should have, Dr. Thorne. Blind trust is rarely rewarded in this galaxy." "It wasn't blind trust," he countered. "You were in distress. I helped. Simple human decency." "Nothing is simple between our species," she said quietly. "But your assistance won't be forgotten." They continued in silence, the warrior and the wordsmith, their shadows stretching before them in the dim emergency lighting of the station corridor. Outside, the magnetic storm raged on, isolating them from the rest of the universe in their unlikely alliance. Eris couldn't shake the feeling that removing her armor had been more significant than just helping her breathe. Something had shifted between human and Zidonian in that moment. A small crack in an ancient wall of suspicion and distance. What would come next? He couldn't begin to guess. The station's canteen was deserted when Eris entered 3 days later, save for the commanding figure seated alone at the farthest table. Commander Valerius had claimed this corner as her territory, back to the wall, full view of both entrances. Even eating, she maintained the vigilance of a predator in unfamiliar territory. She did not acknowledge his entrance, though Eris was certain she'd noted it. Her focus remained on the datapad before her, one hand idly bringing food to her mouth while the other scrolled through information. Eris hesitated, then made a decision. After selecting his own meal from the synthesizer, a bland approximation of pasta that the machine insisted was classic carbonara, he walked deliberately toward her table. "May I join you, Commander?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. Her silver eyes flicked up, studied him briefly, then returned to the datapad. "If you wish." Taking this as permission, Eris sat across from her. For several minutes, they ate in silence. Her armor, he noticed, had been partially repaired, though she wore it in a more relaxed configuration than before, with ventral plates disengaged. Perhaps a concession to the malfunction, or perhaps a subtle acknowledgement of the relative safety of the station. "The storm persists," she said finally, breaking the silence. "Communications remain limited." "Yes," Eris replied. "The magnetic interference is stronger than usual this season. Your rescue vessel may be delayed by several more days." "Not rescue," she corrected sharply. "Support. I do not require rescue, Dr. Thorne." Eris suppressed a smile. "Of course. My apologies." Her eyes narrowed slightly, perhaps detecting his amusement. "Your station's repair facilities are inadequate. I've been forced to improvise certain components for my ship." "We're a research outpost, not a military depot," Eris pointed out. "Though if you told me more about what you need, perhaps I could help. I'm not just a linguist. I have some engineering training as well." This earned him a measured look. "You've already assisted beyond what protocol would dictate. I wouldn't wish to further obligate myself." "No obligation," Eris said, warming to his food despite its mediocre quality. "Just professional courtesy. Besides, I'll admit, I'm curious about Zidonian ship design. We don't get many opportunities to study your technology up close." "Study?" Her posture stiffened. "My vessel is not a research specimen, Doctor." Poor choice of words, Eris backtracked. "I meant learn from. Exchange knowledge." Commander Valerius considered this for a moment, then set down her utensil with precision. "What do you know of Zidonian culture, Dr. Thorne?" The question caught him off guard. "I've studied your language extensively, both modern military dialect and classical forms. Your society values strength, honor, hierarchy. Your art forms tend toward the austere, but technically complex. Your governmental structure combines elements of meritocracy and inherited status." He paused. "But I suspect you're asking what I know beyond academic understanding." "Indeed." She leaned forward slightly. Do you know why my armor is significant? Eris chose his words carefully. I know it's more than protective equipment. It's identity, status. In some ways, it's the physical manifestation of a Zidonian warrior's place in society. Close, but incomplete, she said. The armor is ourselves. From the day a Zidonian enters military service, the armor becomes an extension of our being. It records our achievements, bears witness to our failures, grows with us. To remove it in the presence of an outsider. She trailed off, her expression unreadable. Is shameful, Eris ventured. Is vulnerability, she corrected, which can be either weakness or strength, depending on context. Her silver eyes fixed on him with uncomfortable intensity. I've been attempting to categorize our interaction in Bay 3, to determine whether I should feel dishonored or something else. Eris felt a sudden weight to this conversation, understanding that something important was being evaluated. And what have you concluded? Commander Valerius was silent for a long moment. I'm still analyzing the variables, she said finally. Your behavior does not align with standard human protocols when faced with a potential adversary. I didn't see an adversary, Eris said simply. I saw someone who couldn't breathe. Something flickered across her features, surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. A simplistic view. Sometimes simplicity is clarity, Commander. She made a sound that might have been the Zidonian equivalent of a thoughtful hum. Your food is getting cold, Dr. Thorne. The abrupt change of subject signaled the end of their personal conversation. As they ate in renewed silence, Eris noticed she seemed more relaxed than before. Marginally, but noticeably to his trained eye for non-human expression. Later that evening, Eris received a message on his personal station terminal. Schematics for a communications component, annotated in precise Zidonian script, with a single sentence beneath, "Your assistance would be acceptable." He smiled to himself. Progress, however small. Over the next few days, a routine developed. Eris would work on his linguistic research in the mornings, then spend afternoons helping Commander Valerius with various repairs. Their conversations remained largely technical, but occasionally veered into cultural exchange. Eris explaining human concepts, Lyra, as he'd begun to think of her, though he was careful never to use her first name aloud, offering glimpses into Zidonian perspectives. On the fifth day, as they worked together in the maintenance bay, calibrating a replacement navigation module, Eris noticed Lyra repeatedly glancing at a particular section of code on his display. Something wrong with the sequencing? He asked. She hesitated, then spoke carefully. The pattern recognition algorithm you're using. It bears similarities to ancient Zidonian mathematical progressions. Eris' interest was immediately piqued. Really? That's fascinating. Cross-species mathematical convergence is a special interest of mine. It's not convergence, she said, her voice suddenly tight. These are specific sequences, sacred algorithms from our historical archives. Sensing the tension in her words, Eris turned fully toward her. I assure you, this is standard human pattern recognition code, but I'd be very interested to see the similarities you've noticed. For a moment, she seemed conflicted, then gestured for him to move aside. With swift precision, she typed a sequence of characters into the terminal. An elegant mathematical pattern appeared on screen, beautiful in its complexity, yet somehow familiar to Eris' trained eye. This pattern, she said quietly, is from the ancient Temple of Whispers. It was carved in a stone 5,000 years ago by our first mathematicians. It shouldn't exist in your databases. Eris studied the sequence, mind racing. It's similar to what we call Fibonacci-derived expansions, but with a dimensional twist I haven't seen before. He looked at her with growing excitement. Lyra, Commander, this could be evidence of shared mathematical foundations between our species' early development. Or even, he stopped himself, aware that he might be treading into sensitive territory. Or even cultural transmission, she finished for him, her expression guarded, which would contradict the official position that Zidonians and humans had no contact before the Centauri Accords. The implications hung in the air between them. Historical revisionism was politically charged for both their species. What is your expertise in ancient mathematical forms? Eris asked carefully. She regarded him for a long moment, clearly weighing something in her mind. Finally, she spoke, her voice lower than before. My mission concerns an artifact of significant cultural importance to my people. A relic from before our recorded history that was lost during the diaspora era. Intelligence suggested it might be found in this sector. This revelation stunned Eris. You're not here on military business at all, are you? You're on an archaeological mission. The two are not separate for Zidonians, she corrected. The artifact has strategic importance. If it were to fall into the wrong hands, particularly those of the Crimson Hand faction, it could destabilize the current peace. The Crimson Hand? Eris frowned. I'm not familiar with that designation. Extremists, Lyra said, her tone hardening. They believe in Zidonian supremacy and reject cooperation with other species. They've grown stronger in recent years, recruiting those dissatisfied with the current leadership's diplomatic approach. Her eyes met his directly. They would view what happened in Bay 3, you touching my armor, as an abomination worthy of blood atonement. A chill ran through Eris. I see. No, you don't, she said, not unkindly. But you're beginning to. She gestured to the mathematical sequence still displayed on the screen. This pattern is believed to be part of the activation mechanism for the artifact. The fact that similar sequences exist in your databases is unexpected. Eris recognized the reluctant trust she was showing by sharing this information. I have access to the station's full archaeological databases. If you told me more about what you're looking for, perhaps I could help. Lyra seemed about to refuse, but then a small alarm chimed from her wrist computer. She checked it, her expression instantly transforming into alert vigilance. What is it? Eris asked, sensing trouble. Proximity alert from my ship's security system, she said tersely. Someone is attempting to access my vessel. They moved with synchronized urgency, Lyra leading the way toward Bay 3. As they approached, Eris saw her subtly adjust her armor configuration to combat readiness, plates shifting and locking into defensive positions. Stay back, she ordered as they neared the final corridor. Not a chance, Eris replied, surprising himself with his own decisiveness. 2 sets of eyes are better than 1. She gave him a sharp look, but didn't argue further. At the observation window overlooking Bay 3, they paused, keeping to the shadows. Below, a figure in maintenance coveralls was working at the external access panel of Lyra's ship. Station personnel? Lyra whispered. Eris shook his head. I don't recognize them, and there's no scheduled maintenance for this bay. Sabotage, Lyra concluded grimly. Or theft. Her hand moved to a weapon at her hip, a sleek Zidonian sidearm that Eris hadn't noticed before. I need to neutralize this threat. Wait, Eris cautioned, studying the intruder's movements. Something's not right. They're too confident, too familiar with Zidonian systems. An ordinary thief would struggle more with your ship's interfaces. Lyra's eyes narrowed as she observed more carefully. Correct. The access patterns suggest training. Her voice hardened. Crimson Hand. They must have tracked my mission. How would they know you're here? Eris asked. Communications have been down due to the storm. Which means... Lyra's expression darkened. They were already here. Watching. Waiting. The implications sent ice through Eris' veins. A spy on Viridian? But there are only 3 human personnel currently stationed here, including myself. Or your maintenance drones have been compromised, Lyra suggested. Regardless, I must act now before they breach the primary systems. Before Eris could respond, she was moving, swift and silent despite her armor. He followed, trying to match her stealth, but acutely aware of his comparative clumsiness. They entered Bay 3 from a secondary access point. Lyra gestured for Eris to circle right while she approached from the left, effectively surrounding the intruder. The figure, still focused on the ship's panel, had their back to them both. Lyra struck with the precision of a predator. One moment she was sliding through shadows, the next she had the intruder pinned against the hull, arm twisted behind their back, weapon pressed to their temple. "Identify yourself," she commanded. The figure, male, Eris now saw, laughed. It was an ugly sound, devoid of humor. "Commander Valerius." The Sword of Xylan, reduced to hiding in a human research station. "How disappointed your ancestors must be." "Kalen," Lyra said, recognition and disgust mingling in her voice. "Crimson Hand Lapdog." The man, Kalen, smiled despite his predicament. "At least I'm not a traitor to my species. Working with humans? Letting them touch your sacred armor?" "Yes, we've been watching." Eris stepped forward, anger overriding caution. "She nearly died because of the storm damage. I helped her breathe." Kalen's eyes flicked to Eris, cold and reptilian. The linguist plays hero. How charming. His attention returned to Lyra. "The hand knows about the artifact, Valerius. We know what you seek. The Echo Stone will belong to those who truly understand its power." Lyra pressed her weapon harder against his temple. "How many more of you are on this station?" Kalen's only response was another mirthless smile. A sudden explosion rocked the bay, throwing all three of them to the ground. Emergency klaxons blared as smoke billowed from a ruptured conduit. "A diversion," Lyra shouted over the noise, regaining her feet with fluid grace. "He's not alone." Through the smoke, Eris saw Kalen scrambling toward an equipment locker. He reacted instinctively, diving forward to tackle the Zidonian spy. They crashed into a stack of cargo containers, grappling for control. Kalen was stronger, but Eris had the advantage of surprise. He managed to land a solid blow to the Zidonian's midsection, earning a grunt of pain. The victory was short-lived. Kalen countered with a strike to Eris' jaw that sent him sprawling. "Humans," Kalen spat. "So fragile." As he reached again for the equipment locker, a blur of silver blue intercepted him. Lyra moved like lightning, her armor enhancing already formidable combat skills. She engaged Kalen in a flurry of strikes too fast for Eris to follow, their movements almost choreographed in their deadly precision. Pushing himself up, Eris spotted a second figure emerging from the smoke at the bay entrance. Another Zidonian, this one in lighter armor, but carrying what was unmistakably a heavy weapon. "Lyra, behind you," he shouted. Without breaking her engagement with Kalen, Lyra pivoted and threw something. A small disc that whirred through the air and attached itself to the second intruder's weapon. Sparks erupted, and the Zidonian dropped the now useless gun with a cry of pain. Kalen used the momentary distraction to break free from Lyra's grasp. He activated something on his wrist computer. "It's done," he called to his companion. "Fall back." The second Zidonian threw a small object toward Lyra's ship. Eris recognized the danger instantly, an electromagnetic pulse grenade. If it detonated near the vessel's systems. Without thinking, he lunged forward, snatched the device midair, and hurled it back toward the bay entrance. It detonated in the corridor with a crackling wave of energy that shorted out the nearby lighting but spared the ship's sensitive electronics. Kalen and his accomplice used the confusion to escape, sealing emergency bulkheads behind them to slow pursuit. In the sudden quiet that followed, Eris became aware of a sharp pain in his side. Looking down, he saw blood seeping through his shirt, a cut from the struggle, not serious but certainly painful. "You're injured," Lyra said, suddenly beside him, her tone accusing as if he'd done something foolish. "It's nothing," he replied, wincing as he straightened. "Just a scratch." She studied him with an unreadable expression. "You protected my ship and warned me of the second attacker." Her voice held a note of confusion, as if his actions didn't fit any pattern she recognized. "Why?" The question struck Eris as odd. "Why wouldn't I? We're in this together now, aren't we?" Something shifted in her silver eyes, a softening, perhaps, or a newfound respect. "Yes," she said quietly. "It appears we are." She helped him to a sitting position against a cargo container, then efficiently examined his wound. Her touch was clinical, but not unkind. "The Crimson Hand knows about the artifact. This Echo Stone," Eris said, trying to distract himself from the sting as she cleaned the cut. "And they know you're here. What's our next move?" Lyra paused, noting his use of our with a slight tilt of her head. The station is compromised. Communications will be restored when the storm clears, which means the Crimson Hand can call for reinforcements. We cannot wait for Zidonian authorities to arrive. Then we go after the artifact ourselves, Eris concluded. Before they can get to it, Lyra questioned, raising an eyebrow. This is not your mission, Dr. Thorne. The danger is considerable. They've seen us working together, Eris pointed out. I'm already involved whether I want to be or not. Besides, you said yourself the patterns I recognized might be related to the artifact's activation. You need me. For a long moment, Lyra was silent, her expression conflicted. Finally, she nodded once, a decision made. Very well, but understand this. Once we leave this station, we enter territory where diplomatic protections mean nothing. The Crimson Hand will kill you without hesitation, not despite your humanity, but because of it. I understand, Eris said, surprising himself with his own resolve. But if this artifact is as important as you suggest, the risk is worth it. Lyra finished bandaging his wound, her movements precise and efficient. As she helped him to his feet, she spoke, her voice low and intense. In my culture, when blood is shared in battle, a bond is formed. You've bled defending my mission. By Zidonian tradition, that makes us battlekin. The declaration hung in the air between them, weighty with significance Eris couldn't fully grasp but instinctively respected. Then, as your battlekin, he said, testing the unfamiliar concept, I suggest we move quickly. Kalen will be regrouping. Lyra's lips curved in the ghost of a smile, the first Eris had seen from her. Your suggestion is tactically sound. She gestured toward her ship. Can you pilot a small transport vessel? Theoretically, Eris admitted, though I'm better with languages than flight controls. Then you will learn, she said simply, as if the matter were decided. Gather whatever you need, weapons, supplies, any data relevant to ancient mathematical sequences. We depart in 30 minutes. As Eris hurried to his quarters to collect essential items, the reality of his situation began to sink in. He was about to leave the safety of the station, join a Zidonian warrior on a dangerous mission to recover an ancient artifact, and potentially face an extremist faction in combat. All because he'd helped someone breathe when their armor malfunctioned. Life, Eris reflected as he packed ancient language databases into a portable drive, had an interesting way of creating connections where none should logically exist. Whether those connections would lead to triumph or tragedy remained to be seen. The vessel hummed beneath them, navigating the treacherous asteroid field surrounding the ancient structure. From the co-pilot's seat, Eris studied the massive construction floating in the void, a perfect sphere of dark material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the distant starlight. The tomb of whispering stars, Lyra said, her voice hushed with what might have been reverence. Thought to be legend until 20 years ago. It's incredible, Eris breathed, temporarily overriding his anxiety. The engineering required to create this, to maintain structural integrity for thousands of years in open space. This is why the artifact is so valuable, Lyra explained, guiding their ship toward what appeared to be a docking port. The Echo Stone is believed to contain the knowledge of the civilization that built this place, including their construction techniques, weapons technology, and interstellar navigation methods far beyond our current capabilities. And the Crimson Hand wants this knowledge for conquest, Eris concluded grimly. Lyra nodded. While our government would prefer to study it gradually, ensuring the knowledge is integrated responsibly. She shot him a sidelong glance. At least, that is the official position. The implication wasn't lost on Eris. Power, regardless of who wielded it, was seldom surrendered once obtained. The docking procedure was tense, but ultimately successful, their small vessel establishing an airtight seal with the ancient structure. As they prepared to disembark, Lyra handed Eris a compact sidearm. You know how to use this? She asked. Eris examined the weapon with trepidation. Point and press. A flash of what might have been amusement crossed her features. Essentially correct, if dangerously simplified. It's set to stun. Use it only if absolutely necessary. Let's hope it won't be, Eris muttered, securing the weapon reluctantly. They entered the tomb through an airlock that functioned with surprising smoothness for its age. Inside, soft blue illumination activated at their presence, revealing corridors of the same light-absorbing material as the exterior. The walls were covered in intricate patterns, mathematical sequences and representational symbols that made Eris' linguist heart race with excitement despite their precarious situation. These patterns, he whispered, running his fingers over the engravings. They're a language system based on mathematical principles. I've never seen anything this complex, but there are elements that resemble both Zidonian classical script and human Proto-Indic symbolism. Can you read it? Lyra asked, her focus divided between the inscriptions and security awareness. Not read exactly, but interpret perhaps. Eris studied the patterns more closely. This section seems to be a navigation guide. And this. He paused, brow furrowing. This appears to be a warning. What kind of warning? Lyra's hand moved instinctively to her weapon. Something about resonance. Mental resonance. Eris frowned in concentration. The tomb speaks to those who enter. Or perhaps more accurately, it tests them. A distant sound echoed through the corridors. Metal against metal. They weren't alone. The Crimson Hand, Lyra whispered, instantly alert. They found another entrance. How is that possible? They were behind us at the station. A second team, Lyra theorized grimly. Or a faster ship. We need to move quickly. They advanced deeper into the structure, following the mathematical patterns that Eris gradually began to understand more clearly. The corridors occasionally branched or opened into chambers filled with artifacts of unknown purpose. Twice they were forced to solve intricate puzzles to proceed further, tests that would have been impassable without Eris' linguistic insights and Lyra's knowledge of Zidonian historical mathematics. In one such chamber, as Eris worked on deciphering a particularly complex sequence, Lyra suddenly went rigid beside him. "Someone's coming," she whispered, drawing her weapon. "Hide." They concealed themselves behind a sculptural installation just as two Zidonian figures entered the chamber, both wearing the distinctive crimson-accented armor of the extremist faction. "The resonance readings are stronger here," one said, consulting a handheld device. "The stone must be close. Kale wants it secured before Valerius can interfere," the second replied. "You're certain the trace signature leads this way?" "Positive. The blood tracker never fails." Eris felt Lyra tense beside him. He shot her a questioning look. "They're tracking me," she mouthed silently. "My blood from the fight." The implications were chilling. No matter how carefully they proceeded, the Crimson Hand could follow them directly to the artifact. As the two extremists moved further into the chamber, examining the puzzle mechanism Eris had been working on, Lyra made a swift decision. With hand signals, she indicated her plan: ambush, capture, interrogation. Eris nodded his understanding, though his heart hammered with fear. Their coordinated movement was silent, perfect, until Eris' foot caught on an uneven section of flooring. The slight sound was enough. Both Crimson Hand warriors whirled, weapons raised. What followed was chaos. Lyra launched herself at the nearest opponent with deadly grace, their armor clashing as they grappled. The second warrior turned his weapon toward Eris, who dove behind a stone column as energy blasts scorched the air where he'd stood. Drawing his own weapon with trembling hands, Eris returned fire. His first shot went wide, but the second caught the Zidonian in the shoulder, staggering him. It bought Eris precious seconds to circle to a new position. Meanwhile, Lyra had gained the upper hand in her struggle, disarming her opponent with a precise strike to the wrist, followed by a sweep that took the warrior's legs from under him. A final blow rendered him unconscious. "Down!" she shouted to Eris, who dropped instinctively as she fired over his head. There was a grunt of pain, and the second warrior collapsed. In the sudden silence, they both breathed heavily, adrenaline still coursing through their systems. "You did well," Lyra said, collecting the fallen warrior's weapons. "For a linguist, the faint praise is overwhelming," Eris replied dryly, though he couldn't suppress a slight smile of relief. What now? They know we're here, and apparently they can track you directly. Lyra's expression was grim as she examined the blood tracker she'd taken from one of the unconscious extremists. This complicates matters, but may also be useful. She studied the device's readings. This isn't just tracking my blood. It's following the genetic resonance between Zidonian DNA and the Echo Stone itself. The artifact is genetically linked to Zidonians? Eris asked, fascinated despite their dangerous situation. Not exactly. The ancient texts speak of the stone responding to the children of the stars. It was always assumed this meant Zidonians, but she looked at him with sudden intensity. The mathematical similarities we discovered. What if they suggest a more complex relationship between our species? Before Eris could process this revolutionary suggestion, the chamber trembled around them. Dust drifted from the ceiling as a low hum built beneath their feet. The tomb is responding to the blood tracker's activation, Lyra realized. We've triggered something. The floor beneath them began to reconfigure, sections sliding away to reveal a spiraling ramp leading downward into darkness. The hum increased, becoming almost musical, a chord that resonated in Eris' chest and made his ears ring slightly. I think, he said slowly, we found a shortcut to the Echo Stone. They descended cautiously, weapons ready, the blood tracker guiding them through a series of chambers that became progressively more elaborate in their design. The mathematical patterns on the walls grew more complex, beginning to incorporate what Eris recognized as astronomical charts and DNA helixes. These symbols, he murmured as they paused in a particularly ornate room. They're telling a story. About genetic manipulation, I think. A species altering itself, or perhaps creating other species. Creation myths exist in many cultures, Lyra noted, though she studied the patterns with obvious interest. This doesn't read like myth, Eris argued. The precision, the consistent mathematical underpinnings. It's more like a scientific record. Before they could debate further, a final doorway opened before them, revealing a chamber unlike any they'd seen before. A perfect hemisphere. Its ceiling was a projection of star systems in meticulous detail. At the center, hovering above a pedestal, was a crystalline object about the size of a human fist, multifaceted, glowing with inner light that shifted through colors in a pattern that seemed almost alive. The Echo Stone, Lyra breathed, her usual stoicism giving way to wonder. They approached slowly, reverently. The stone's light pulsed more strongly as they neared, the colors shifting more rapidly. It's responding to our presence, Eris observed, but not aggressively. More like recognition. Lyra reached out toward the artifact, then hesitated, her hand hovering inches away. The ancient texts warn that only those worthy can touch the stone. Others are destroyed by its power. Define worthy, Eris said nervously. That is the question that has puzzled scholars for generations, Lyra replied. Some believe it refers to bloodline, others to intention or moral character. A crash echoed from the corridor behind them, followed by voices, angry, determined. Kale, Lyra identified grimly. And his elite guard. They found us. They had seconds at most before the Crimson Hand would reach the chamber. Lyra made her decision, reaching for the stone with determined purpose. As her fingers approached, the artifact's glow intensified painfully. Lyra gasped, her body going rigid as energy coursed visibly through her armor. She couldn't withdraw her hand, couldn't speak, her features frozen in a mask of pain. Lyra, Eris moved instinctively, grabbing her shoulders, trying to pull her away from the stone's influence. The moment he touched her, the energy field expanded to encompass him as well. Pain like nothing he'd ever experienced lanced through his mind, but also knowledge, overwhelming and incomprehensible. Visions flashed before his eyes. Star systems, civilizations rising and falling, genetic codes being manipulated, a race of beings fleeing a dying world, seeding new life forms across the galaxy. Humans, Zidonians, others, all connected, all descended from the same ancient source. The revelation was too much, too fast. Eris felt his consciousness slipping under the onslaught of information. Through the haze of pain, he heard heavy footsteps entering the chamber, saw the crimson-accented armor of Kale and his warriors. "Step away from the stone," Kale commanded, his weapon trained on them. "It belongs to the true Zidonians, not traitors and humans." Neither Eris nor Lyra could respond, locked in the Echo Stone's grip. Kale signaled his warriors forward, their own hands reaching toward the artifact. The moment they entered the energy field, everything changed. The stone's light turned harsh, blood-red. The warriors screamed, their armor seeming to constrict around them, crushing inward as the stone's judgment manifested physically. "What is happening?" Kale demanded, horrified as his men collapsed. Somehow, through the pain and flood of information, Eris understood. "Intention," he gasped. "The stone judges intention. Yours is conquest, destruction." Kale raised his weapon, rage distorting his features. "Then I'll take it by force, after eliminating both of you." Before he could fire, Lyra broke free of her paralysis with a tremendous effort. In one fluid motion, she drew her sidearm and fired. The blast caught Kale in the chest, sending him staggering backward. "Not conquest," Lyra said, her voice strained but resolute. "Understanding. Unity. The true purpose of a stone." The Echo Stone pulsed once more, then detached from its pedestal, hovering momentarily before settling into Lyra's outstretched palm. The painful energy receded, replaced by a warm glow that spread up her arm and across her torso. "The ancient texts," she murmured in wonder. "They spoke truth. The stone chooses its bearer based on worthiness of purpose." Kale, recovering his balance, snarled with fury. "You will not leave this place alive, traitor. The stone belongs to the pure Zidonian race." "There is no pure race," Eris interjected, understanding flooding through him from the stone's revelations. "The stone has shown us the truth. Zidonians, humans, we share creators. We are kin, separated by time and distance, but fundamentally connected." "Lies!" Kale raised his weapon again. With unexpected speed, Lyra moved to intercept him. Her armor, still infused with the stone's energy, seemed to flow more fluidly around her body, enhancing her already formidable combat abilities. She disarmed Kale with insulting ease, then pinned him against the chamber wall. "The Echo Stone has chosen," she said, her voice resonating strangely in the hemispherical room. "Not me alone, but us, human and Zidonian together. The knowledge it contains was never meant to divide, but to reunite what was separated." The chamber shuddered around them, the star map overhead shifting rapidly, as if responding to Lyra's words. "We need to leave," Eris warned, his scientist's mind processing the structural implications. "The tomb is reconfiguring itself, possibly preparing to seal now that the stone has been claimed." Lyra nodded, securing the immobilized Kale with restraints from her armor. "This one comes with us. He will face justice for his actions." They retreated quickly, retracing their path through the now-transforming structure. Corridors sealed behind them, new ones opened ahead, as if the tomb itself was guiding their escape. The unconscious Crimson Hand warriors were nowhere to be seen, either evacuated by their comrades or claimed by the shifting architecture. When they finally reached their vessel and detached from the tomb, Eris watched through the viewport as the massive sphere began to fold in upon itself, diminishing in size until it vanished entirely. Not destroyed, he somehow knew, but transported elsewhere, its purpose in this location fulfilled. In the cockpit, Lyra sat with the Echo Stone cradled in her hands, its glow now gentle, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Eris could see that her armor had changed subtly, incorporating patterns reminiscent of the tomb's mathematical sequences. "What now?" he asked quietly, aware that they had just altered the course of history for both their species. Lyra looked up, her silver eyes meeting his with new understanding. "Now we bring the truth home, to both our worlds." She held the stone between them. The knowledge here isn't weapon schematics or construction techniques, though those exist within it. Its true purpose is to remind us of our shared origin, to heal the divide between species that should never have been separated. Not everyone will welcome that truth, Eris pointed out, glancing at the still unconscious Kale. Change is seldom embraced easily, which is why we must proceed carefully. Lyra reached across the space between them, her armored hand finding his. The stone chose both of us, Dr. Thorne. Its wisdom will not be implemented by Zidonians alone. The gesture, unprecedented for a Zidonian warrior, spoke volumes about how much it changed. Eris returned the pressure of her grip, feeling the weight of new responsibility settling upon him. I suppose my contract with Viridian Orbital is effectively terminated, he said with a small smile. I believe, Lyra replied, a hint of warmth in her voice, that you found a more significant position in galactic affairs. As their ship plotted a course away from the asteroid field, Eris reflected on the chain of events that had led to this moment. A damaged ship, a malfunctioning suit of armor, a request for help from a proud warrior who couldn't breathe. Small actions, he realized, could cascade into transformative change. Just as the removal of armor had been the first step toward removing the barriers between their species. The Echo Stone pulsed between them, a testament to shared past and newfound future as their vessel accelerated toward the stars. 1 year later, Eris stood on the observation deck of the newly established Joint Cultural Embassy, watching vessels from a dozen different species approach the massive space station. Below him, the main reception hall was filled with diplomats, scientists, and cultural attaches preparing for the first public demonstration of the Echo Stone's historical archives. Nervous? Lyra asked, joining him at the viewport. Her armor, now permanently modified by the stone's influence, gleamed with integrated mathematical patterns that shifted subtly in changing light. It was no longer just a symbol of Zidonian military might, but a living record of newfound understanding. Terrified, Eris admitted with a smile. Public speaking was never my forte. I preferred dusty archives and isolated research stations. Yet here you stand, she observed, co-director of the most significant cross-species initiative in recorded history. Things change. He turned to face her fully. People change. The past year had been transformative for them both. After the initial shock and resistance from conservative elements in both societies, the evidence provided by the Echo Stone had proved irrefutable. Humans and Zidonians, along with 3 other spacefaring species, shared common ancestry, their genetic codes deliberately seeded across the galaxy by an ancient race fleeing extinction. The political ramifications were still unfolding, but the immediate impact on Zidonian human relations had been profound. The Crimson Hand, delegitimized by the revelation, had fragmented and lost power. New cooperative ventures had flourished, from scientific exchanges to cultural programs. And on a personal level, Eris and Lyra had become something unprecedented, partners who bridged the divide between species not through clinical diplomacy, but through genuine connection. The Zidonian High Council has approved the next phase, Lyra informed him, her voice careful, measured. Genetic compatibility research. Eris raised an eyebrow. That was faster than expected. Your speaker for tradition was quite adamant about maintaining genetic purity last month. The speaker has been persuaded by recent findings, Lyra replied, a rare hint of amusement in her tone, and perhaps by his grandson's friendship with a human exchange student. Personal connections, Eris nodded, more powerful than any political argument. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the approaching vessels dock with practiced precision. I received your proposal, Lyra said eventually, her tone shifting to something more personal, for the joint research expedition to the Cygnus Reach. And Eris prompted when she didn't immediately continue. It's unnecessarily dangerous, she stated flatly. The region is known for magnetic anomalies similar to those that damaged my vessel originally. Communication would be limited. Support vessels would be days away at best. True, Eris conceded, trying to hide his disappointment. However, Lyra continued, turning to face him directly, I find I am increasingly willing to accept calculated risks when the potential rewards are significant. Eris felt a smile spreading across his face. Is that a yes, Commander Valerius? It is, she confirmed, her silver eyes holding his. With one condition. Name it. Lyra reached up, pressing a sequence on her collar that released the seal of her helmet. With practiced ease, she removed it, exposing her face fully, something she still did rarely in public settings. You helped me breathe once, she said, her voice softer without the helmet's filter. You removed my armor when I could not. Now I find myself restricted. Again, her words were careful, precise, yet Eris could sense the emotion beneath them. The difference is that this time, the barriers are of my own making. Eris understood immediately. Despite their partnership, despite all they had accomplished together, Lyra still maintained certain walls, professional distance, cultural separation, the armor of protocol and tradition. Are you asking me to help you breathe again, Lyra? He asked quietly. Yes, she said simply. Not from physical constraint, but from older patterns, expectations, the weight of being the first to walk this path. Her hand, unloved now, reached for his. I find I do not wish to walk it alone. The gesture, intimate by Zidonian standards, spoke volumes. Eris took her hand, feeling the slight difference in temperature, the subtle texture of her skin against his. You never have to ask, he told her, his voice low with emotion. Not for this. Not ever again. Something shifted in her expression, a softening, a vulnerability freely chosen rather than forced by circumstance. She stepped closer, their joined hands caught between them. The ancient text spoke of many things, she murmured, of shared origins and common purpose. But they also spoke of the power of combined breath, two beings sharing air, sharing life. Understanding her meaning, Eris leaned forward slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished. She didn't. Their lips met in a kiss that bridged more than physical distance. It crossed cultures, histories, and the very stars themselves. When they parted, Lyra's silver eyes held a light he had never seen before. What happens next? She whispered, echoing the question that had lingered unspoken since their first meeting. Eris smiled, knowing the answer with newfound certainty. We breathe together. We built something new, and we never put the armor back on in quite the same way. Above them, through the viewport, distant stars shimmered. The same stars that had witnessed the seeding of their species millennia ago, now bearing witness to their reunion. The Echo Stone, secure in its chamber below, pulsed with approving light as if sensing another small but vital step in the healing of an ancient divide. The proud warrior who had once fought for breath now breathed freely, deeply, no longer alone. And the human who had helped her had found his own missing piece, his place in a universe far more connected than anyone had dared to imagine.